I watched my brother Marcus stand at the head of our parents' formal dining table like he'd already won. The inheritance meeting hadn't even officially started, and he was already dividing up Grandpa's properties like they were poker chips he'd earned through skill rather than birthright favoritism. "Riley gets nothing," he repeated, savoring every word. "Mom and Dad agreed years ago. Everything real estate goes to the firstborn." "That's me." My mother nodded approvingly from her seat. My father raised his wine glass in silent agreement. My sister Emma smirked from across the table. The message was clear. I was the family disappointment, and this was my punishment for daring to choose my own path instead of falling in line with their expectations. I took a slow sip of water and said nothing. Because I'd learned something valuable over the past 6 years. Sometimes the best response to cruelty is silence. Sometimes the best weapon is patience. And sometimes the sweetest victory is the one nobody sees coming. Let me take you back to where this really started. Growing up, the roles in our family were clearly defined. Marcus was the golden child. The successful investment banker, the one who made 6 figures by 28, the one who knew how to play the game. He attended every family function, laughed at Dad's jokes, agreed with Mom's political opinions, and most importantly, he made our parents look good to their country club friends. Emma was the supportive middle child. Pretty, agreeable, married to a successful dentist, producing grandchildren on schedule. Me. I was the problem child. The one who studied environmental science instead of business. The one who worked for a nonprofit making $42,000 a year while Marcus bought his second BMW. The one who asked uncomfortable questions at Thanksgiving about wealth inequality and climate change. The one who didn't understand that family loyalty meant never challenging the family narrative. "Riley's still figuring things out," my mother would say to her friends, her voice dripping with disappointment masked as concern. "Not everyone can be as driven as Marcus." The truth was simpler and crueler. I didn't worship at the altar of money and status the way they did, so I became the family embarrassment. The cautionary tale. The reason Marcus and Emma looked even better by comparison. But there was one person who never treated me like a failure. One person who saw something in me that my parents couldn't or wouldn't see. My grandfather, Robert Chin. Grandpa Robert was different from the rest of the family. He'd built his real estate portfolio from nothing. 12 rental properties across Florida that generated roughly $26,000 per month in rental income. But unlike my parents who'd inherited comfort and turned it into smugness, Grandpa had stayed humble. He remembered what it was like to struggle. He'd been watching the family dynamics for years. He saw how Marcus manipulated our parents, how Emma went along with everything, how I was systematically excluded and dismissed. And he saw something else. Something that happened repeatedly over Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. He saw Marcus taking credit for managing the rental properties while actually doing very little work. He saw the quarterly financial reports that didn't quite add up. He saw my brother's increasingly expensive lifestyle that somehow always aligned with unexpected maintenance costs on the properties. "Riley," Grandpa said to me one afternoon in February 2019, when I stopped by his house after work. "I need to talk to you about something important." We sat in his study, surrounded by books and the smell of old leather. He pulled out a folder thick with legal documents. "I'm not blind," he said quietly. "I see how they treat you. I see how Marcus's stealing from the rental accounts has been for years. And I know what's going to happen when I'm gone. Your parents will side with Marcus. They'll freeze you out completely. They'll let him take everything while telling themselves it's what I would have wanted." My throat tightened. "Grandpa. So I'm not giving them the chance." He slid the folder across the desk. "These are quit-claim deeds transferring all 12 properties into your name, effective immediately. The properties are paid off. No mortgages, no liens. They generate about $26,000 a month in rental income. I've already recorded them with the county. Legally, as of today, you own them all." I stared at the documents, unable to process what I was seeing. "But why me?" "Because you're the only one who never asked me for anything," he said simply. "Because you chose purpose over profit. Because you care about making the world better, not just making yourself richer. And because I know you'll do the right thing with this gift, not just for yourself but for others too. Mom and Dad will lose their minds." "Probably." He smiled. "That's why we're not telling them. Not yet. Let Marcus think he's getting everything. Let your parents plan their grand distribution. When the time comes, you'll have the documentation you need. And Riley? Document everything. Every rental payment, every expense, every interaction. Marcus has been stealing and you're going to need proof. I left his house that day with a secret that felt like carrying the sun in my pocket. Burning, powerful, impossible to hide for long. Over the next 4 years, I did exactly what Grandpa advised. I documented everything. I hired a property management company to handle the rentals professionally. The monthly income, $26,000 on average, went into a separate business account. I paid all legitimate expenses, maintained the properties properly, and saved the rest. The management company handled tenant relations, maintenance requests, and rent collection. To the outside world, nothing had changed. But I was learning. I studied real estate law, property management, investment strategies. I attended seminars on my weekends. I consulted with estate attorneys and tax specialists. That nonprofit salary? It became supplemental income. The real money, the money that was transforming my life, came from 12 rental properties in Tampa, Orlando, and Miami that my family didn't know I owned. By 2021, I'd saved $380,000 from the rental income after expenses. I bought a modest condo in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy, nothing that would raise questions. I invested in index funds and municipal bonds. I built an emergency fund that could cover 2 years of expenses. And I watched Marcus. The property management company I'd hired sent me detailed reports. They also kept records from before March 2019. Back when Marcus was supposedly managing everything for Grandpa. The discrepancies were stunning. From 2016 to 2019, Marcus had systematically stolen from the rental accounts. He'd claimed maintenance expenses that never happened. He'd pocketed security deposits. He'd underreported rental income to Grandpa while keeping the difference. Over 3 years, he'd stolen approximately $187,000. I had bank records. I had falsified invoices. I had testimony from contractors Marcus claimed to have paid but never did. I had a forensic accounting report that laid it all out in excruciating detail. I kept it all in a locked filing cabinet in my condo waiting. Grandpa passed away in October 2023. He was 87, surrounded by family, peaceful at the end. I held his hand and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." He squeezed back once. He knew I understood. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect. Lots of public grief from people performing mourning rather than feeling it. Marcus gave a eulogy about Grandpa's business legacy that made me want to scream. Emma cried prettily into her husband's shoulder. My parents accepted condolences with dignified sadness. I stood quietly in the back and remembered the man who'd saved me. 2 weeks after the funeral, my mother called. "We're having an estate meeting," she announced. No greeting, no warmth. "This Saturday, 2 p.m. at the house. The attorney will be there. We need to discuss the distribution of your grandfather's properties." "I'll be there," I said calmly. "Marcus will be handling most of the real estate," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "He's been managing those properties for years. He knows them inside and out. Your father and I agree it makes the most sense." "I understand. We'll find something appropriate for you, Riley. Maybe a small cash distribution. Something modest." "That's very generous," I said, my voice neutral. She paused, perhaps expecting an argument. When none came, she said, "Good. Saturday at 2, and hung up. I stood in my kitchen looking at the framed photo of Grandpa and me from my college graduation. He was smiling, his arm around my shoulders, looking proud. "It's time," I said to his photo. I spent the week preparing. Not emotionally. I'd been preparing emotionally for 4 years. I mean legally, strategically, completely. I met with my estate attorney Michelle Cardoza at her office downtown. She'd been helping me manage the properties and had become something of a mentor. "They're going to try to claim everything," I explained. "Marcus thinks he's inheriting 12 rental properties. My parents have probably already spent the money in their heads." Michelle reviewed the documents with her typical thoroughness. "You have recorded quit-claim deeds from March 2019. The properties transferred to you legally and completely. Your grandfather had full legal capacity. The deeds were properly executed and recorded with the county. There is zero ambiguity here, Riley. You own these properties outright. You have owned them for over 4 years." But they'll fight it. Let them. She smiled coldly. I've documented everything. The rental income going into your accounts. The tax returns you've filed. The property management contracts in your name. The maintenance expenses you've paid. You have 4 years of evidence showing ownership, management, and legal right. Plus, she pulled out another folder. The forensic accounting report on your brother's theft. $187,000 over 3 years. Bank records. Falsified invoices. Everything you need. What do I do at the meeting? Bring your folder. Let them talk. Let them reveal their plans. Let them show their true intentions. Then when they're fully committed, when they've said everything they're going to say, produce the deeds. I'll be on standby. If they escalate, I come in. If they threaten legal action, I shut it down immediately. I nodded slowly. They're going to lose their minds. Yes, Michelle agreed. They are. But Riley? They've earned this. Every dismissive comment, every cruel comparison, every time they made you feel less than, they've been earning this moment. Don't feel guilty about it. Saturday morning I dressed carefully. Not too nice, I didn't want to raise suspicions. Just neat, professional, respectful. I looked like the person they expected. The underachieving youngest child coming to accept whatever scraps they decided to throw my way. I put Grandpa's folder in my messenger bag. Inside were the original quit-claim deeds, county recording certificates, 4 years of bank statements, tax returns, property management contracts, and the forensic accounting report on Marcus's theft. I also brought something else, a small photo of Grandpa and me. Not for them. For me. A reminder of who believed in me when no one else did. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 1:58 p.m. The dining room was set up like a corporate boardroom. My parents sat at one end of the table. Their estate attorney, a nervous-looking man named Gerald, sat beside them with folders and laptops. Marcus sat across from them looking confident and comfortable. Emma and her husband Derek were there as witnesses and supporters. And there was one empty chair at the far end of the table. For me. Physically distant. Symbolically isolated. Perfect. I sat down without a word. Gerald cleared his throat and began going through preliminary matters. Estate taxes, asset valuations, outstanding debts. The usual legal choreography that precedes the main event. Then Marcus leaned forward. Let's talk about the real estate portfolio, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who assumed he'd already won. 12 rental properties across Florida. Combined value approximately $4.2 million. Generating roughly $26,000 in monthly rental income. My mother nodded. My father smiled slightly. I've been managing these properties for Grandpa for 7 years, Marcus continued. This was a lie. He'd been stealing from them for 3 years and hadn't managed anything after March 2019, but I said nothing. I know every tenant, every property, every detail. Mom and Dad agree, and I think Grandpa would have wanted for me to continue managing and ultimately owning these properties. That makes sense, Emma chimed in. You've put in the work, Marcus. Gerald, the attorney, looked uncomfortable. There is the matter of the will. The will is clear, my father interrupted. Robert wanted his assets distributed among his children and grandchildren in a manner that reflects their contributions and capabilities. Marcus has proven both. Riley. He looked at me with something between pity and contempt. Riley has not. This was my moment to object, to argue, to fight for my peace. They were waiting for it. They wanted me to get emotional so they could be the reasonable ones, the ones making hard but fair decisions. I smiled politely and said nothing. Marcus took my silence as weakness. Here's what we're proposing, he said, sliding papers across the table. The 12 rental properties transfer to me. I'll continue managing them, generating income, building value. Riley. He looked at me with performative generosity. You'll receive a one-time cash distribution of $50,000. That's more than fair, given your lack of involvement in Grandpa's business. $50,000. From a $4.2 million portfolio that generated $312,000 annually. Less than 2 months of rental income from properties I'd actually owned and managed for over 4 years. Everyone in favor? My mother asked, as if this were a democracy. Every hand went up. Except mine. Riley, my father asked. Any objections? I reached into my messenger bag slowly, deliberately. I pulled out the folder Grandpa had given me 4 years ago, now considerably thicker with additional documentation. Actually, I said calmly, I do have a few questions. Marcus's confident smile faltered slightly. I opened the folder and slid the first document across the table. A recorded quitclaim deed dated March 15, 2019. This is the deed for the Tampa property at 2847 Henderson Boulevard. Quitclaim deed transferring ownership from Robert Chin to Riley Chin, recorded with Hillsborough County on March 15, 2019. Would you like to see the county recording certificate? Gerald, the attorney, picked up the document. His face went pale. I slid another deed across. Orlando property, 1523 Mills Avenue. Same date. Same transfer. Another deed. Miami property, 8847 Collins Avenue. Same date. I kept sliding them across one after another. 12 properties. 12 quitclaim deeds. All properly executed, notarized, and recorded with the county. All dated March 15, 2019. All transferring ownership to me. What is this? My mother demanded, her voice shrill. These are the property deeds, Mom. Grandpa transferred all 12 rental properties to me in March 2019. I've owned them legally and completely for 4.5 years. They're not part of his estate because he didn't own them when he died. I did. I do. Marcus grabbed the deeds, scanning them frantically. This is impossible. I was managing these properties. No, I said calmly. You were stealing from them. From 2016 to March 2019, you embezzled approximately $187,000 through falsified maintenance expenses, pocketed security deposits, and unreported rental income. After March 2019, you had no access to anything because I'd hired a professional property management company. I slid another document across. The forensic accounting report. This is a complete audit of the rental accounts from 2016 to 2019, prepared by Sullivan & Associates, forensic accountants. Bank statements, invoices, contractor testimony, everything. You claimed $12,000 in roof repairs for the Tampa property in June 2017, except the roofing company has no record of that work. You claimed $8,500 in HVAC replacement for the Orlando property in March 2018. The HVAC company never received payment and never did the work. You pocketed security deposits from 14 different tenants. The math is all there. Marcus's face had gone from red to white. You can't prove. I can prove all of it, I interrupted. Bank statements showing the deposits into your personal account. Timestamps matching the supposed expense claims. Testimony from contractors you never paid. Everything documented, time-stamped, and legally verified. My mother stood up. This is ridiculous. Robert would never cut us out like this. He didn't cut you out, Mom. He cut me in. There's a difference. You still get his house, his cars, his personal investments, his savings. But the rental properties? Those were transferred to me legally 4.5 years ago because Grandpa saw what I was too afraid to admit. That Marcus was stealing from him, and that you and Dad would side with Marcus no matter what evidence you saw. You manipulated him. Emma shouted. He was elderly. Gerald, the estate attorney, cleared his throat weakly. The deeds appear to be properly executed. If Robert Chin had full legal capacity in March 2019, he had a full neurological evaluation 2 months before signing these deeds, I said, sliding another document across. Clean bill of health. Full cognitive function. The evaluation was done specifically to establish capacity for estate planning purposes. Grandpa thought of everything. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. I also have recordings. Grandpa knew you'd fight this, so he made video recordings explaining his reasoning. Would you like to watch him explain, in his own words, why he transferred these properties to me? Why he documented Marcus's theft? Why he knew you'd side with Marcus no matter what? The room fell silent except for the sound of my father's heavy breathing. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. Those properties should be mine. I worked. You stole, I corrected. You didn't work. You embezzled. And now you're claiming ownership of properties you haven't legally had access to in over 4 years. Properties I've been managing, maintaining, paying taxes on, and earning income from. Properties I own. I stood up slowly, gathering my documents. Here's what happens next. Gerald, you'll verify these deeds with the county. You'll find they're all properly recorded and completely legal. Mom, Dad, you'll accept that these properties are not part of Grandpa's estate and therefore not subject to distribution. Marcus, I looked directly at my brother. You'll cooperate with the forensic accountants investigating the $187,000 you stole, or you'll face criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. You can't do this, my mother shrieked. I'm not doing anything, I said calmly. I'm simply stating what already is. I own 12 rental properties in Florida, legally transferred to me in March 2019. I've paid all taxes, maintained all properties, managed all tenants and documented everything. These are facts, not opinions. Marcus's face was red now, veins bulging in his neck. You ungrateful. Ungrateful. I laughed and it wasn't a nice sound. Ungrateful for what, Marcus? For being called a failure at every family dinner? For being compared to you constantly? For being told I'd never amount to anything? For being excluded from family decisions? For being treated like an embarrassment? I leaned forward. Or should I be grateful that you stole $187,000 from Grandpa while he was alive and would have stolen everything from me if given the chance? My father found his voice. If you proceed with this, Riley, you're done with this family. Dad, I said softly, I've been done with this family since you decided I was a disappointment for choosing environmental science over investment banking. The difference is now I have the financial independence to not need your approval anymore. I picked up my messenger bag and walked toward the door. Riley, my mother called. If you walk out that door. I turned back. I'll walk out this door, the legal owner of 12 rental properties generating $26,000 per month in income. I'll walk out this door with documented evidence of Marcus's embezzlement. I'll walk out this door with 4.5 years of successful property management proving Grandpa's faith in me was justified. And I'll walk out this door knowing that the man who actually mattered, the man who actually saw me, made sure I'd be okay. I opened the door, then paused. The estate meeting is over. Gerald, you'll receive copies of all documentation from my attorney, Michelle Cardoza. She'll be in touch Monday morning. Marcus, expect to hear from the forensic accountants this week. They'll want to discuss repayment terms before deciding whether to press charges. I walked out to the sound of my brother screaming and my mother crying. I got in my car, a sensible Honda, nothing flashy, and drove away from my parents' house. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The explosion happened exactly as expected. Within hours my phone started ringing. First my mother, crying and angry. Then my father, cold and threatening. Then Emma trying to play mediator. I let them all go to voicemail. Then Marcus's attorney called. I forwarded that call to Michelle Cardoza, who handled it with professional brutality. Your client has no legal claim to properties that were legally transferred to my client in March 2019, she told them. If your client wishes to pursue legal action, we'll countersue for the $187,000 he embezzled, plus interest plus legal fees. We have documentation. We have witnesses. We have bank records. We have everything. I suggest your client focus on making restitution rather than making threats. Marcus's attorney never called again. By Monday, the family had hired a different lawyer to challenge the quitclaim deeds. Michelle was ready. She filed a motion to dismiss, attaching the county records, the neurological evaluation establishing Grandpa's capacity, and affidavits from the notary and witnesses present at the signing. The judge reviewed everything and dismissed the challenge with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be filed again. Cost to my family: $15,000 in legal fees for a lawsuit they never had any chance of winning. Cost to me, $0. Michelle had handled everything as part of her ongoing representation. By Tuesday, the forensic accountants had contacted Marcus directly. They offered him a choice: full restitution of $187,000 plus interest, $214,000 total, paid over 60 months, or they'd refer the matter to the state attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Marcus, suddenly not so confident, hired a criminal defense attorney. That attorney, after reviewing the evidence, strongly advised him to take the restitution deal. By Wednesday, Marcus had withdrawn his challenge and signed the repayment agreement. By Thursday, my mother left a voicemail that was more revealing than she intended. How could you do this to your brother? He's ruined now. His reputation, his career, everything is destroyed. And for what? Money. This is who you really are, Riley. Grandpa would be ashamed. I saved that voicemail. Not to listen to again, but as evidence of something I'd always known. In my family, the crime wasn't stealing $187,000. The crime was catching the thief. But Thursday also brought something unexpected. A letter arrived at my condo, forwarded from my parents' house. It was from Grandpa's personal attorney, not Gerald but someone else, someone I'd never met. Inside was a letter dated March 10, 2019, 5 days before the property transfers. Dear Riley, if you're reading this, I'm gone and the meeting has happened. I imagine it went exactly as I predicted. Marcus claimed everything, your parents supported him, and you produced the deeds that proved them all wrong. I want you to know something. I didn't give you those properties because I felt sorry for you. I gave them to you because you earned them, not through manipulation or favoritism but through character. You chose purpose over profit. You chose authenticity over approval. You chose to be yourself even when it meant being alone. Those are rare qualities, Riley. Those are valuable qualities. Marcus thinks success is money and status. Your parents think success is appearances and approval. They'll never understand what you have: integrity, compassion, genuine purpose. Use these properties wisely. Build something meaningful. Help people. Make the world a little better. That's the legacy I want to leave, and you're the only one I trust to carry it forward. I'm proud of you, kiddo. Always have been. Love, Grandpa Robert. I read the letter 3 times, sitting on my couch with tears streaming down my face. Not sad tears. Grateful tears. Validated tears. He'd seen me. Really seen me. And he'd made sure I'd be okay. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. I'd left the nonprofit job, not because I didn't believe in the work, but because I could do more good with resources than without them. I used the rental income to establish a foundation focused on environmental conservation and affordable housing. We bought properties in struggling neighborhoods, renovated them sustainably, and rented them at below-market rates to families who needed a break. The foundation bore Grandpa's name, the Robert Chin Community Foundation. Marcus paid his monthly restitution reliably. The criminal investigation was closed, but his reputation in the family business community was destroyed. Word got around about the embezzlement. His investment banking firm quietly asked him to resign. Last I heard, he was working for a much smaller firm in a much smaller role for a much smaller salary. My parents never apologized. Never reached out. Never acknowledged what had happened except through lawyers and terse emails about estate matters. Emma tried to maintain a relationship with me, but it was hollow. She wanted access to my properties for her friends' vacations more than she wanted a relationship with her sister. I was okay with all of it. I'd learned something important. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up for you, who believes in you, who sees you. My chosen family included Sarah, my best friend from college, who'd believed in me when I had nothing. She became the foundation's program director. Michelle Cardoza, who'd fought for me and protected me and became a mentor and friend. The property management team, who'd helped me build something meaningful from Grandpa's gift. And the memory of a man who'd loved me enough to ensure I'd never have to beg for scraps from people who saw me as less than. 1 year after the estate meeting, I did something I'd been planning for months. I bought a 14th property, a small house on a quiet street in Clearwater. I renovated it completely. New kitchen, updated bathrooms, solar panels, energy-efficient everything. Then I donated it to a family selected by a local homeless services organization. Free and clear. No rent, no mortgage. Just a home for people who needed one. I hung Grandpa's photo in my office, right above my desk. In the photo, he's smiling, his arm around my shoulders, looking proud. Thank you, I tell him sometimes when I'm working late on foundation projects. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for believing. Thank you for making sure I'd be okay. I imagine him smiling, satisfied, knowing his gift created something bigger than rental income or property values. Knowing his gift created purpose, dignity, and the chance to help others the way he helped me. My brother wanted properties. I inherited something better. The knowledge that I was loved, I was valued, and I was enough. That's the inheritance that actually matters. Epilogue. 3 years after the estate meeting, I received an unexpected email from Marcus. Subject line: I'm sorry. The email was long, rambling, clearly written after therapy and probably several drafts. He acknowledged the embezzlement. He acknowledged the cruelty. He acknowledged that Grandpa was right about everything. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what Grandpa saw in you and what he didn't see in me. You were building something real. I was just performing success. You had character. I had an act. I read the email 3 times. Then I wrote back, I appreciate you writing this. Apology acknowledged. I wish you well in your continued growth. I didn't offer reconciliation. I didn't offer relationship. But I offered something, acknowledgement, civility, a door not entirely closed. Sometimes that's enough. I'm 34 now. The foundation owns 19 properties. We've housed 42 families. We've invested $2.1 million in neighborhood revitalization. We've created something meaningful from Grandpa's gift. And every time someone asks me about success, what it means, how to achieve it, why it matters, I tell them the same thing. Success isn't about who applauds when you walk in the room. It's about who believed in you when everyone else walked out. Build for those people. Honor their faith. Create something that would make them proud. Grandpa Robert believed in me when no one else did. I'm spending the rest of my life proving he was right.